Yeah. All right, so we can finally catch up on the past year.
Hey, I'm here. I'll jump in a moment or two.
All right, take your time. I'm running with the idea that we were batting around yesterday, faith GPT. So I was like, fuck it, let's add the Bible and through the looking glass and maybe Plato's Timaeus and maybe the Quran and maybe the Tao Te Ching and maybe some Zhuangzi. It's pretty good. But what scares me is what we talked about yesterday with Coinhawk, that BabyAGI shit. That's the next level.
There was this concept that was introduced with an anime called Sword Art Online,
Hmm.
and then like one of the seasons was talk about how like a lot of current like AGI kind of thinking is that like we just feed it like what we know, right, versus what it could like learn on its own, right? Like basically like consciousness and things like that. And so the idea is like they proposed that the AI would like be like bottom up like intelligence where like it only knows the world that you give it, right? And it starts as like a baby with just like the whole baby AGI thing. um, and then like it would just like learn over time on its own and interact with other like baby AGI like type of like entities. Kind of interesting. Because like I think they described it as like top down AGI and then like bottom up AGI. Like top down is like what we take what we know now as humans and then we just feed it
Yes,
a bunch of information, right?
yes,
Versus it learning on its own.
yeah. I think that in the end, you have to be both. You have to try to marry the best of both of those worlds. Um, but at the end of the day, the interface has to be opinionated towards the niche. So, for example, if I'm creating Faith GPT, I don't think Faith GPT would be as popular as Quran GPT, for example. You know, I was talking to Zach about these yesterday about how including faith could turn off a lot of people, but I think it can turn on a lot more people because often when I speak to people and they're battling with a deep question, they'll cite scripture, whatever their body of scripture is.
I'm getting a smoke check for my car. They've already used my car.
Mhm.
That was quick.
Just on the call. All right. Nice. Yeah, so let's catch up on the last 18 months.
Yeah, right.
You know, I only really started learning how to code faster when ChatGPT came out.
It's pretty amazing, man. Like it is like it's so crazy. Like
I'm starting to show my clients and do stuff for clients. I talked to an author who just came out with a book, and I'm like, yo, why don't you create a ChatGPT based on your book?
ah
And he's like, fuck yeah,
uh
right? And so that was the basis of, you see it at the top, Faith GPT,
right.
right? And then I started adding after you do that, you're like, okay, well, give me some examples from the Bible. Okay, well, what if I added the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, the Gita, Plato's Timaeus, through the looking glass? And so I started adding other files, doing the ingestion, vectorizing with Pinecone, and I have it running locally right now. But
And
yeah,
which one is that one? Which platform is that one on?
so I'm using Visual Studio Code,
Yep.
and I'm using a. Have you ever heard of Mayo or Chat with Data?
Not offhand. Yeah.
You are going to love this. So this guy is a madman, and he showed um, how you could. Uh, he put his code on GitHub
Awesome.
for a individual instance of ChatGPT based on PDFs, or a body of Notion documents. I'm looking for it. Let me put it at the top. Mayo. So for that example I'm using, for Faith GPT,
Yeah.
I'm putting the code to the top there. It'll say, I built GPT for Warren Buffett.
Right.
And what he's looking at is the 3 previous years of annual reports from Tesla, which are like 500 pages each per PDF.
Gotcha.
And the code works. I just downloaded the zip file from GitHub, loaded it into Visual Studio Code, changed the API keys for OpenAI, Pinecone, the namespace, all that kind of stuff, and then just loaded different documents. And it just run.
I love it, man. Yeah, I need to jump on to that one because that's like a real. I mean, it seems like it's like that interface that that's like the real killer of everything, right? Like if you've got a good, easy to use interface, right, with something to kind of follow, especially like like a doc reader. Like yeah, that's pretty slick. All right, so Mayo, okay, all right, I'll get those guys.
And I'm just putting it to the top. It's called Make Your Own ChatGPT. So that's me using his repo.
Yeah.
And going through the steps like I'm a noob. I'm going to go to so I diagram everything out. And then I walk through it. Download Visual Studio Code. Right? Open the project. Replace the API keys one by one.
Yeah.
Load the documents one by one. And then walk through all of the installations step by step. It's actually the first time I got anything to run locally on my machine. I've been using a Google Colab notebook this whole time.
Okay,
but
right.
I wanted to move from Python to like a web app. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
But again, I didn't even know I was using TypeScript. Somebody had to tell me what a TSX extension meant.
Yeah, TypeScript. I was like, me. One of them is like somebody uses Markdown, and I was like, oh man, I forgot what Markdown it looks like. And I was like, let me Markdown thing. Yeah, TypeScript, Markdown, and the other one. Good deal. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been using for the images. I start off with Playground and Wombo, and then use Midjourney. Have you ever used a Leonardo.ai?
I've heard it, and then I saw something you posted. I've heard it, and I went out to the site once. I think I might have like signed up, but I didn't. I don't think I even played with it.
Yeah, It allows you to train your own AI image model based on a custom set of images you provided.
That's golly.
Yeah, I'll put to the top.
So crazy.
All right, so I'm putting it there. So I had Playground generate that image, the plushie verse. I actually put Tulsi Gabbard's name in there. And that's what it gave me.
I love it.
And then I made more variations on it and then kept on updating the training model with the images that were most like it.
Yeah, man, I love this, man.
So that's for Leonardo. Obviously, 11 Labs is for cloning your voice. Have you used that?
I played around with it, so
Okay.
I don't
So
know it
you're
very
not.
well, but I definitely played around with it.
Yeah. I find that with 11 Labs, you have to provide it 3 different styles of the same voice. So, no affect, presenter voice, and then somewhere in the middle. If you provide those 3 within 90 seconds, it's pretty good.
I got you. Oh,
Because
man.
whenever you ask somebody to talk, they kind of do that broadcaster voice, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Hi,
Mm-hmm.
my name is Michael Jagdow, and I'm cloning my voice for 11 Labs. That, you know what I mean? But you don't want that,
Yeah, you want
right?
the regular talk. Yeah, you want the regular
Uh-huh.
pitch. Mm-hmm.
You know what's crazy with 11 Labs? You can paste in Sanskrit, and it'll use your voice to read in Hindi.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's like we see some of it with I guess it's Google or one of those little like a little device or whatever.
Hmm.
These folks are like advertising. I see these little
Yeah.
ads. People are sitting at a table and like, oh yeah, one person asks in one language and then they
Hmm.
tip or whatever. It's like such a weird interaction, but like you see its usage and you see it like
Yeah.
you can see it like, oh yeah, that's a that is a case for it. It's still kind
Yeah.
of awkward, weird,
You
but
could
like
use that as a UFC press conference so that,
yeah, yeah,
Jangalayev from the Ukraine or fucking Dagestan, you can understand what's going on now.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. So many like crazy
Hmm.
moves that we haven't even thought of, and it seems like we haven't anyway, but some people have, and they're doing stuff to bring it to life. Is like it's so wild, and it's so open right now. It is kind of scary to like just imagine because so far I haven't seen too many things that are like, oh my goodness, this is the end of the world. Like I haven't
Hmm.
seen
Hmm.
too many of those yet. But like the more I just think like what is possible, like with just some thought, that's kind of like really putting some thought to it. Like there's so
Well,
many.
I was thinking about, we have a charity, and the charity wants to provide school supplies to kids in Ghana and remote regions.
Mhm.
And imagine you could provide over a little Mac that sits in the room in the corner access to a large language model. Like, do you know what you could do for all of those kids?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna boost. It's gonna boost. Like if you have the right, teacher, instructor,
Uh-huh, the body of knowledge.
yep, yep. If you have them and because you can shorten lessons or you can personalize or customize like a lesson or a lesson plan or whatever, right? So you might have,
Student
all the
can
data
customize
somewhere.
it.
Yeah. What's that again?
The student can customize it by the virtue of the
Yep,
way
yep,
they
yep,
ask
yep, yep,
questions,
yep, exactly. Yep, indeed,
right?
indeed. Yep, indeed.
Here's what I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able to have the answers to these 10 math questions. I'm not going to teach you it. Here's a machine. Why don't you learn it yourself?
Yeah.
So there's a diagram up there that says pretty much.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that one. Yeah.
So that's the way I'm thinking about this stuff. So you have OpenAI or Cohere or Google Bard or Amazon's or all of them at the same time
Mm-hmm.
connected to a body of knowledge. And then you're using LangChain as the prompt template or engine for the thought, action, observation, behavior. But then I stopped and I was like, okay, I better take in this baby AGI stuff because there's too many talented people excited about it for me to ignore it.
Right. Yeah. Because with this kind of model, like I don't, I'm not sure which app would do it yet, right? But it may not be in action yet, but like that image that you have, there is talk of, and it probably does exist, and I just don't know about it yet, but there's, where you take this picture and just upload it, and it will like interpret it and then say, all right, hey, is this what you're looking for? Here's a possible plan, or here's a, you know what I mean? Like, here are the the companies or the sites you'll have to interact with or whatever. And some of them will even build it. You know what I mean? Like, let's say if you load everything in. Let's say you were going to throw it to AWS or something, or whoever, or on your own local machine or whatever. It would complete those tasks, or at least put those things in a file, put a script in a file. You know what I mean? Like all this thinking and all its readout, it can put it together in code, and you could literally execute it, and it again. As of right now, I'm not gonna, like I say, you execute it and it's going to work perfectly, but it will get pretty close to it. And as far as like 8 of the 10 steps, I would say, and then you might still need a little bit of tightening up on, like ready for production type thing, ready for the masses to hit it. But like it's so crazy, man. Like, and it's here, and it's accessible, and it's not like. Ridiculously expensive or anything.
Yeah,
It's so crazy.
I was talking to an author and I'm like, yo, why don't you create a chat GPT based on your book? And he's like, that would be amazing. I'm like, all right, here it is. I just refreshed the API key, deleted the pine cone, started a new one, dragged in his book, and I was done.
Yeah. Wow. That's so crazy, man. Yeah, I'm gonna spend some time with that setup that you shared, the Mayo one, and
Man,
get the environment set right. I love that. Like that's like the ideal, right? Because I definitely got a whole heap of folders, filled with all kinds of stuff, right? Like I've got a whole bunch of programming folders, right? With multiple languages, multiple PDFs from, learning trainings or whatever, and, stuff that's just available online or whatever. And like to be able to throw those in there, and, or like one of, I've got like these like old, like things that are in the public domain, and, you can go to like archive, I think it's archive.org, and pretty much anything in the public domain you can find. And so like one of like analyzing some of those, and like so just like dumping like the whole folder, essentially in there.
And then you get sued by Stack Overflow, or in a few months.
We'll revise it. We'll revise it before it hits the world. It'll be up there.
I'll help you how to do it. You have to hire a lawyer now.
Oh yeah.
I can run this on local 3000, but you want to upload this.
Right. You get it out to the world. You gotta.
Yeah.
Take a couple steps. For sure.
Well, that's why it was like, okay, the Gita, public domain. The Bible, public domain. The Quran, Lewis Carroll, Plato's Timaeus, Zhuangzi, right? Confucius, all public domain.
Yeah. It's all kinds of stuff, man. Like, imagine like I'm waiting for all the conspiracy guys, like
they're here.
Conspiracy, programmers, you know what I mean? Like, they get a hold of this, like imagine the conspiracy start coming out.
The really strong developers I know are laughing their ass off. To be honest with you, they're like, "Yeah, you want to replace me?
Right?
Yeah, you think I'm not using this shit? Right? Eventually, you're gonna have a problem with that thing." And I'm going to tell you, you should have used my solution. Oh, you have a solution? Yes, I have a solution. I have a M2, I have Alpaca, and I have access to the internet and a Linux distribution.
Yep.
The guy yesterday was talking about how a company on the Fortune 5,000 is going to be apprehensive about uploading their trade secrets to Pinecone.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're inevitably going to want to have their own essentially edge computing kind of scenario where, they roll their own large language model.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same thing. Like folks are like some companies have like kind of banned I guess standard chat GPT or whatever whatever, because like, there is a little warning on it somewhere it happens where it, kind of says like, hey, look, this is still experimental, blah, 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 whatever, like, and the data that's collected, right? So if you are, XYZ company with all these amazing trade secrets or whatever, and, you start using chat GPT to, whatever, improve your processes or, you know, understand the industry or competition or something, like all that data, pretty much goes right to OpenAI. And, as of now, right, they may or may not be like fully using it, like for themselves, but you can bet it is somehow, I would believe, being fed back into either this current model or the next one that's coming, like, so, he said these guys went to like 100 million users in like 2 months or something, like some ridiculous thing that took, 2 years for, whoever, TikTok or Snapchat or whoever one of those guys, whatever. Like, so, the amount of queries, right?
Wait a minute. I wonder if TikTok can start making its own viral videos based on the knowledge it has. And like a GPT-4 with a bit of, runway ML for the video.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we were talking about yesterday, because like I realized, okay, hold on. What is Replica? Replica has an avatar that speaks. Well, you can use Studio DID for that. You've used that before?
I have not. I've heard, I
Oh,
know
man.
Replica. Yeah.
Hold on. Studio.d-id.com. Ah, this is how I'll do it. So studio, here, Leonardo video, AI. See if I can find the lady. I had her saying something. So let me put to the top. So studio.d-id.com. This allows you to have an image of a person, add an audio file of that person speaking, and then the mouth will animate.
Oh my Jesus.
So if you have 11 AI for the clone voice,
like that to the deep fake, to the deep.
you understand. Yeah, we've been playing with it. So if you can have the video, if you have a picture of the person that you want speaking, you've cloned their voice or you have their actual voice. Now that you have their ability to talk, if you use the script of what you want to have this clone voice to speak, generated by any GPT, right, that you roll your own.
Yeah. Wow.
You have Replica.
Yeah. So crazy. Jesus. It's so wild. So I was like, and I feel like so just excited and almost overwhelmed, which is like the greatest and worst feeling to have, because it's like there's so much potential, and it feels like the runway is so short, and the timing is so tight.
I mean, it might be true that we're basically picking up pennies in front of a steamroller.
Yeah, true indeed. But the more pennies we pick up, the better off we'll be when that steamroller really comes. Like we'll
picking up satoshis in front of a steamroller.
Yeah, hopefully steps to the side, as soon as it's coming, and we'll be ready to jump on the back of that steamroller and roll with it.
It's not like I'm not worried about the future and the labor apocalypse, right? But after we're done worrying, what do? Put our heads in the sand and go to the town square and start, picketing against the new light bulb? Or do we learn this shit and try to stay relevant for the next 18 months?
Exactly. Like, hey, say, figure out where those those lines being installed. You know. Oh man, you
What do you think, Rocky? Pretty much. That's why I called it pretty much.
What do I think of what is it, the labor apocalypse? You mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm in the boat where it's like, yes, it's gonna suck for a number of people who are gonna lose their jobs, but there's gonna be jobs that get created. That's my opinion. Like the
You know how
things
many
that are gonna get created from. So I was hearing with Mentis in one of his spaces about how this wasn't my words. These are just like ideas that I've like learned from people, but someone described it as, things like ChatGPT and these AI tools, they have commoditized execution. So in the sense that like the things that you thought of but didn't have the time to, or even the expertise to do something like based on an idea that you have, we've now commoditized that execution, right? You want to do something in code, you could do now that with ChatGPT. You want to do something in marketing, you can learn all of the marketing model that existed prior to 2021, and you can make that happen very, very quickly, right? And that's not to say that these ideas aren't going to fail. I think with more people trying, more people are going to fail. It's like a numbers game, right? But because we're like trying and iterating so quickly, like we're going to get to that next thing that's going to be like the Amazon, right? And so that's the boat that I'm in.
It's crazy because as we're saying this, how many cashiers are about to get laid off? You seeing the retail apocalypse right now?
Exactly.
What the fuck, dude?
Yeah,
what do you do with those people?
It's gonna suck, right? It's totally gonna suck, and there's going to be a lot of backlash to those people who are losing those jobs. Like,
yeah, Andrew Yang
same thing
was the
as like,
one person who saw all of this.
I mean,
But
in terms of like politics, it might come into a point where it's like, oh, like if you're using robotics or AI or whatever, there might be some kind of tax or something like that. I think there's some talk about that.
I can see
like,
regulation
BI.
coming from taxation. Yes, absolutely.
For sure.
I can totally see that. You're using AI, that means you're using the public's agora body of knowledge, and therefore we're going to add a tax. I could totally see that. Uh-huh.
I don't think the idea of work, like, there are people in the camp who are like, oh, if you get UBI, people are going to be lazy and no one wants to work. I don't think that's true. I think people get bored. Like, there's going to be some people who will want more out of life rather than just the basics, right? And there are going to be people who are just innately, like they crave like creativity and like extra stimulation in their life, and so they're going to capture that human value, right? That time. And so like that's just gonna be whatever jobs are gonna be. And like just this week alone, like you saw me like struggle this week with the whole like ad targeting on Facebook Pixel and things like that, where it requires like human coordination, right? Things that, because not everything is documented well. Like most startups have terrible documentation. And so any kind of process that's gonna need human collaboration and just like problem solving like that, you're still going to need those
Yeah,
types of people.
that's why I got into sales.
Yeah,
Sales.
I'm an engineer, but I've always been in the camp where it's like, if I can solve a problem without typing any code at all, I would rather do that. Like,
Yes.
I think some engineers are too, like, it's kind of mean, but like they're like code monkeys. Like the people who are purely just code monkeys, they're going to get replaced because ChatGPT is going to produce better code at a faster rate than any code monkey out there.
Well, I was thinking about, you were talking about ChatGPT for Shopify developers. And that's what I was thinking about for BabyAGI. Because it's one thing to ask for code snippets. It's another one to give it the sufficient template, agent, and liquid code such that it can spin up the solution. And I'm wondering just how much BabyAGI can do of that.
You know how I forgot his name. He was sharing yesterday. Was it Steve? He was really like I really liked what he said. He was having a conversation with Zach the other day. He said like a lot of these GPT UI layer like apps on top. Um, the goal like he suggested that the goal after is basically to get as much users as possible and get acquired.
Build it so you
Um,
can get acquired in the and I clarified
so
him on that.
Michael, we're getting acquired by Shopify. That's the goal. Okay. We're gonna
Yes.
use it and then get acquired by Shopify so they can put this in their document like directly because Shopify Docs has a search, but it's like terrible. It's like really really bad. Like it doesn't really answer your question, and you have to go to the forums anyways. So like if this tool can parse the solutions from the forum and answer directly in the docs, like there's no reason why Shopify wouldn't pay for that and just acquire it for their docs.
There we go. All right. So
Because they make so
let
much,
us
like the majority of Shopify's revenue is actually not the plans, it's off of payments. So like the more merchants are on Shopify, the more money they make. And so there's this relationship between the number of partners and developers on Shopify and getting like onboarding more merchants. Like that's how you onboard more merchants. Like you have good developers, you have good apps, and then you make money off of just the payment. Like it's gone to the point where if you're an app on Shopify, the first $1 million that you make, Shopify doesn't take a cut because it's like so small to them. Like a fraction of $1 million is like compared to what they make overall in terms of just the 2.5, plus 30 cents or whatever for every transaction that they make. It's really not that much in terms of their revenue. So.
all right. So I went to the BabyAGI page. I have the main.zip. I'm now that I got that Mayo to work, right? I can run something locally. It's like, okay, if I can get that to run locally, I wonder if I can get this thing to run locally. It's so funny because you ever feel like scared when you start doing this kind of stuff?
What, like scared of like I want to create the next Skynet?
Yeah, kind of.
Really? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna destroy my box. One of the two.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this Mac confiscated. Hey, what happened to Mike? Oh shit, he ran the wrong query. Really? Yeah. All right, so I have it in. The script works, blah, 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 blah. How to use. Clone the repository.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of conversations with like, okay, if everyone is going to, it's like, it could be like one or the other or even both, right? So like earlier, Michael, you were talking about how like eventually everyone's going to want their own model run locally so that they can't share it, right? But if they do choose to share it, there has to be a way for you to like essentially like hide the data, like obfuscate the data, like hack it or something, and then monetize it, right? And then if you keep it locally, like that's kind of terrible. Because what if there's like a fire, right? There's a whole like OPSEC and things like that, and security and backup, right? But that can be very expensive. And how do you monetize that type of data? It's like from what my understanding is like the data, like the guys from OpenAI, like they understand like the neural networks and how the data is going in, but they don't really understand like what happens in the middle. Like they get the front, which is data going in, and then they get the output, which is data going out. But they're not really sure on like what is happening in the middle that got it to that answer. And that's like the scary part because it's like unknown, right? Um, and so like going back to the whole like monetizing thing is it's one of the reasons why like a lot of the tech people are like big on Cardano is because Charles and all those academic guys, like they've thought about this before, ChatGPT was a thing. Like they knew that like we would have because like if we have an AGI, right? Who gets to control the AGI? Who gets access, right? Because if you can tell it to like, oh, I have $100,000, I want you to turn into $1 billion company, like who gets access to that, and the resources aren't like unlimited. That processing power is limited physically. So who gets first dibs to make the first billion kind of deal? So those are the types of things you got to figure out.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the further emergence of the like token economy. Like Mike, I'm like heavy on the Bitcoin side, right?
Mhm.
And like this is like where there's been so many folks that says, oh, all these different use cases that people have come up with within like Bitcoin, blockchain, and all that, right? Um, but like this is this is where you'll see that that kind of idea play out. So it may not be on Bitcoin, it may not be on Cardano or Ethereum or whatever, right? But that same philosophy of like tokens, right? Of internal monies, like you'll pay for the subscription. And I imagine that like OpenAI would have it, kind of as Rocky mentioned, like they'll have it where enterprise level, enterprise level fees that a company will pay, and they'll have some of those kind of securities of like, we'll store your data, or you know, we won't allow your the information generated from your searches or your queries and your prompts. We won't let that get out to the wild, right? While you're using the API, it'll behave like it's in your own garden kind of deal, right? Is my thinking that one of the ways that they'll be able to monetize on it, right? The way you'll pay Microsoft group licenses, it's enterprise level, and they'll 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 hopefully they'll put those parameters in, ideally that would say, hey, kind of like AWS, right? Like, so you can pretty much build a server that does anything, and AWS will let you run it, right? But like they don't necessarily at the all your data isn't necessarily shared, but like if you run like nefarious scripts or something, nefarious programs that push out there, and they leave from a like the DNS, like AWS DNS that's controlling it. Yeah, they'll shut you down. They'll stop it, because it's like, hey, this traffic is showing it's been seen to be harmful, and so they'll stop it like that. So I think that's what'll kind of happen as far as that, right? Or and whatever's available to the public will be kind of dumbed down, right? I heard a guy who was able to do some testing on GPT-4 before it got released, and he was pretty much saying that, like, the results that you get now will be different than those results that he got. And he said to some degree, he felt like the results that everybody's getting now is, maybe a little bit muffled or a little bit, caged. And I'm like, yeah, I could probably see how that works. Because like if you play around with the Chat GPT 3 or 3.5 or whatever it is, and then play around with the 4, like you can see like kind of a little bit of the nuance, that like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure 3 was caged as well, but I don't know. It's hard to say, because I think it tries to be like really neutral, right? So it doesn't want to give you like legal advice, or it doesn't want to tell you, open source versus commercial or whatever, like it doesn't want to fully tell you like, hey, if I'm a startup with 100,000 starting, and I want to I've got 100 users, and I want to grow those 100 users, whatever, right? Like, should I go open source with my stack, or should I go proprietary commercial with it? Like, it will not you know, it'll tell you like, oh, you need to determine the best, or, you know, let's determine the best options, or let's the pros and the cons. And so it'll give you, you know, pros, it'll give you cons, and it'll say like, you know, you have to make this decision, right? So that's straight, just regular Chat GPT, you know, and GPT-4 or whatever. Like it won't really, in certain circumstances, like it will not necessarily tell you exactly what to do, right? Which is good, I think. You know, I think that's good. The tricky part is the like those baby AGIs and anything that's you know, like that, where it can run, it will keep on going, right? Like it'll keep trying, like it won't necessarily you know, like stop at that. Hey, these are the pros, these are the con, you know, here are the steps for this that you would take or whatever, and you know, general steps you would take for all this stuff. The difference where that baby AGI and those guys come in, like they will come up with those initial determinations that ChatGPT gave it, and then they'll hit the internet, you know, and you know, they'll hit the internet and refeed whatever they found from those pros and cons, you know, and it will, you know, keep on trying, right? So if you're like, oh, I want to develop a script that, you know, sends 1,000 pings to you know, XYZ company or something, you know, and you know, it might come back with, you know, it may initially come back with something like, oh, you know, that would cause harm or this or that, and still give you the info, right? But, you know, warn you or try to get you out of it. Those baby AGIs will, you know, take in all that stuff and then just, you know, keep trying to build that app, you know, like is its ideal goal or whatever. So like it is pretty scary and things can happen really crazy, but you know, we'll play it out and see what happens.
Maybe you can help me out. I'm in Visual Studio Code, and it says I'm at the step where I need to pip install requirements.txt. And it says command not found pip.
And you're doing PIP, right?
Yeah.
All right. So so you're in VS Code, and are you looking at, you have like the terminal at the bottom half of your screen? All right. And I'd probably tell you to make a, well, do a dir, make sure you're type in Python or py space dash version, right? Like in the terminal section at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And command not found py.
All right. So what do you got to do? You gotta what you gotta do is you gotta tell. I'm gonna tell you about it. Then, you know, so don't do these steps until, you know, later. So what I think what you got to do is tell it, you got to add the run in terminal, you know, segment to it, which is like in the lower left corner. I think there's like a little gear, and you got to choose.
A lot of the answers I see are related to changing the interpreter to Python.
Yeah. So so one of the settings is like which interpreter you want to use, and
yeah. So where do I pick the interpreter?
Have you added the Python like from VS Code? You've added you know, like the Python extensions and all the little defaults that they tell you to do with that one?
Well, I think it's because I'm missing Python, but it says when I do Python 3 dash version, it says Python 3.9.6.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you want to upgrade to 3.10. So
how do I do that?
What's the easiest way? Is it Python dash update?
Update Python command. Let me see.
Yeah.
Python command. Let's see. Oh, come on. Update Python command.
Yeah, it's a quick one. In most
Yeah.
I don't know if I another way you can try. So hey, in VS Code, right?
Yeah.
Along the left side, you'll see like there's like these 4 little blocks where one little block can make it jumping on, right? So that's like the extensions. So hit that, and it'll open up like a little window, another window, and search for Python, right? And make sure all the different things they tell you to install, just go yes. You know what I mean? Like that will sometimes do it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, like if it's not a fresh install of VS Code or whatever, it'll act buggy or whatever. It'll act crazy. Like, oh, I don't know the pathway to get to your interpreter. That's all it is really. But you will need that 310 version.
Okay. I think it's installed. So let's try this again. Command not found. Pip. Do I have to do the interpreter?
Yeah, but like, there's a couple ways to do that interpreter, and like one way I know will make it where it always does it, right? I just looked at it like the other day because let me see. Give me a moment. I'm just on this phone. Let me see if I can remember. Or find a guy. If I can find a YouTube guy that did it. Let me see something. Because like Eli, you come looking for me, boy? What's up, man? Give me a moment.
Let's see if this works. Command not found Python. What does that mean? Do I just have to install?
It's like that terminal, the environment. So
yeah. Okay, gotcha.
It's saying that basically like in that terminal or in that.
Yeah.
It's not pushing it down to that. Not going to the pathway that Python lives to run the code, right? Like it used to be that you have to be in the folder completely to run it. So like meaning like if you went to the command prompt, like search CMD and command prompt, like try your Python version and it should pull it up. Like if it sees it on there, and then you should be able to like execute commands inside of it, right? But what we're trying to get is for that pathway to lead to whatever directory you're in, right? So you open up a new file, maybe you save that file to a certain folder, right, in your docs or in your programming folder or whatever it is, and then so you want that environment to be what the terminal is below, right? So if you go on the terminal little button, lower right in VS Code, and I think there's like a little arrow or something drop down. Like, what does it tell you there? Or what do you see?
Oh, bash ZSH JavaScript debug terminal configure terminal settings.
Yeah, but I don't want to tell you that on that one because I think that was a little tricky to do it that way. It may be. If you go to the lower left side, I can't think of the command to tell you, in the little gear, and go to settings under that.
Okay.
All right, and then
gotcha.
And there's something right in the middle of the page that says, oh man, I don't have it right. It's just something like wait a minute, let me think about it. Don't click on it. It's like edit JSON file or some edit. All right, and so that'll open up another window, right? So you might see, 1 or 2 lines that are like quoted in or something like what we'll need like in the next line below it is your pathway. But I don't put it in there yet because like I said, it's a little. I can't really get to my machine.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I'm looking it up as you talk. Um,
Yeah, do a search, do a Google search on get
iPhone
yeah,
colon.
Python terminal in VS Code or something like that.
Yeah.
Terminal settings in VS Code for Mac or whatever device is Mac. I think you're on right.
So default interpreter path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pip packages. Oh, let's call that. Downloading configuration. Um, let's see. ZSH. How do I change? Maybe I do a plus. Nope, I don't want that. Configure terminal settings. Terminal kind. No. No worries. Well, we're getting close. The main thing is that I was able to
Let's see if I can post this little link. I said, what's the best way to post it in the in the up above and
yeah, sure, or DM, either way.
yeah, I'll try to just send you the a link to a YouTube guy that I didn't go through that video fully just now to see it, but
No,
he
no,
said
it's beautiful.
like two or three of the words, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about
Yeah,
right
that's the one.
there. That's the word. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as smooth as it seems, but he definitely said.
The beautiful thing about this is that it's written in Python,
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm much more familiar with than fucking TypeScript.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I looked at this repo, and man, this repo has a lot. Like, this guy wrote so much code. You know, but
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, It's funny because I spend like 20 minutes coding for every 2 hours of pacing back and forth.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that normal for coding?
That's about me. Like I usually go hard for about 30 to 45 minutes. Usually about
Uh-huh.
45 minutes. I try to like I don't know, use 30 to 45 minutes and then I just got to do something else. I got to walk away from it because I either get, stuck or confused or like I just need to think about something else for a moment to even think about what I'm trying to do. Because like
I'm feeling.
I'm like you or you're like me where like I do a lot of stuff on the fly and like without a
Yeah,
real
just
clear concise
inspiration.
plan.
Oh,
Yeah,
let's try to do this. Blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
working
yeah.
now.
And I'm like, I'll develop a whole project. Like,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Well, that's the scary part because, the time between ideation and physical manifestation has really never been shorter.
Exactly.
And now that I don't have to go outside myself
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
get it done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that's like once the basics, once like the environment is set up, and like you're able to, get the thing to run through once, right? Um, clearly, cleanly, you understand where it's at and how it's
Yes,
running,
if you
whatever,
can
right?
get it
Yeah.
stable.
Yeah. Once you kind of get there, then it's like, oh yeah, now I can, I can maximize that thing. I could keep feeding it ideas and, keep having it pump out without, the rigmarole of like the whole setup and getting it, just kind of getting it going or whatever, right? Get those base environments set up. Like, and that's, I mean, obviously that's still where some of the challenges with all this stuff, right? And there's, everyone is different. There's a new one and this, and that, it's like, oh man, I got to add all these other things. But like, what I tell myself is like, all right, just focus on one or two, obviously the chat GPT guys, right? For sure. Right. But then, like the Pine Cones, 11 Labs, add those guys in that are seem like they're like the top guys right now to really kind of learn it from. But then have you a couple of the, straight GitHub, downloads and use it, like you say, you can run it locally and, you can really test it out and play around with it and, break it and, redo it if you had to, you know what I mean? Like it's not like just your dime on, so you're like, I'm trying to think of the best thought to give this thing because it's going to cost me,
Well, so
20
this is
per query. That's where it's going at,
so this is my approach to it. Right now, I'm going to all of the founders that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, yo, you know how you have this? What if you had like the general pitches? What if you had your own personal GPT?
Right. Right.
Just for you, based on your body of knowledge. You're an instructor, you're an author, you're a whatever it is. What if you had a GPT based on you? And they say, yeah, that'd be cool. And then you show it to them. And then I find once it's kind of like the pool of Narcissus, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because instead of telling them about AI or ChatGPT, I'm showing them a reflection of themselves. And that's what I find is really turning them on.
Yeah, that's a hell of a sell. Yeah, that's a hell of a sell. Yeah. It's like that, what it would be when people say like, oh yeah, go Google yourself or whatever. And like you're like, oh wow, all this info is out there, or whatever. And like if you are that, like that founder or, author or whatever, all those things that have been, that are out there, living in the internet, it can be pulled back in and, revamped and reworded and told in a whole new way. And you're like, oh man, this is like crazy. Yeah, I like it. That's a great sell position. I like it.
So that's where the budget's coming from next, which is me just showing them this UGPT, basically.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have to look at some domain names.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They're going to be like almost everything you could imagine, every word GPT. Like something GPT. Like you did the Buddha GPT, then the faith GPT is like, oh yeah, that's like makes so much sense. Like that could be an app that gets spun up and is just kind of out there, just sitting, with a couple of Google AdWords, ads living on the bottom, top, and a link to your own, connections to you or whatever, like, and it's just there, right? And people are like, oh yeah, let me just go and do this, this random search, or then like, oh, I can do this about me, and they're like, oh yeah, let's go dig deeper into myself, and I guess there's so many ways that this can be used and not see it being used, like it's happening like right now.
Yeah, the more I do these little projects here and there. Oh shit, I should put this to the Discord actually, where all these nerds live. Where is Discord? Yeah, like I signed up for a hackathon at the end of the month. That's for BabyAGI, just because I want to rub shoulders and figure out how to use it.
Yep.
Okay, so let me go to lab. Welcome to the hackathon. Introduce yourself. tutorials. Okay. Can I post it? Yeah, can. I'm finding, I got a gig through fucking Discord.
Oh, word? Wow.
Yeah, just by being in there and
Mhm.
showing them my stuff.
That's great,
How
man.
to leverage Mayo, aka chat, with Data's GitHub repo to create a custom chat GPT based on your own body of knowledge. I'll put that there. And then go to my own. I'll go to, oh, that's what I should do. Change the thumbnail. Yeah, some guy just saw me posting there. And he hit me up. He's like, hey, I'm working with these real estate documents. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I have all these like applications for real estate. I'm like, well, that sounds like a good thing to use it for. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, here, this is how I got the code. And he's like a full-on developer, right? I'm like, yeah, this is how it's working. And now all of a sudden we're talking on a video call on Discord and showing him how to use it. He's like, oh, I see what's happening. It can't access the PDF data. So what if I use an OCR? And he
Yeah.
writes the OCR. And he's like, yeah, I got it working. Thanks. I'm like, no problem.
That's awesome, man. That's great, man.
Glad I could be of assistance.
Right? Yeah, that's a write-up right there. You can definitely write that one up. Yeah, because
So,
like to me, like that's like the real key and killer that again, like if you keep letting your mind run, at least I keep letting my mind run. And part of what you mentioned is like what I keep thinking about as well, that like you want to be able to have as much control over it as you can, right? So like you said, like that personal building of one that
mhm.
then, based on, hey, look, we'll take all the data that they, allow in, GPT on its own, right? But then, we incorporate that into our own, model or whatever that, further analyzes it, right? Where, who knows, like there may be there are certain biases that exist in the chat GPT model. And like, I'd be interested in like feeding it additional or feeding my own version additional data that might
Yeah, because
suit, right,
if
what I
you
mean.
curate the data, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that you can download any fucking agent you want. Then
Yeah.
it's all about the curation and the tag. Like that's what the venture capitalist talked about yesterday. He says if you want to make money, make it in the next 3 months. Train your own large language model, right? Make sure you have your taggings all good, and then exit in the next 90 days,
Wow. Yes,
right?
Jesus. God, that's about
And
right
that
too.
really resonated with me.
That's about right. That's about right. Because like you really could like develop like a whole body of work within 90 days. Like I saw a guy who he's like is it AI app a day or app a day or something? I don't know,
Hmm.
something like that. But he's basically saying he's like, well, I'm trying to build an app a day, utilizing Chat GPT and other things, Auto GPT, Baby, whatever, like everything, right? Whatever. He's trying to build like an app a day, and I was like, wow. Yes, you really could kind of do that, like because you could
So,
come up with the idea and the plan, you come up with
so
the
tell me
idea,
more
feed it for the
about.
plan. Yeah.
So I'm teaching math and music
Yeah.
with one of the school boards here, right? I'm teaching the geometry of music theory,
Mm.
right? Um, and the reason I'm digging into all this stuff is because I don't just want to teach them music. Music is just the best way to get someone's attention.
Yeah.
Once I have their attention, then eventually I want to teach them about, this minimum viable business doctrine that, I learned from U of T, right? and then the coding side,
Yep.
because you can turn a single individual into a digital mercenary, so to
Yeah.
speak. And I don't think we have to wait till they're 18, by the way.
No, you do that. They actually spawn much better before. So, like, yes, right? You don't have to wait till then, that's for sure.
So we're about to teach about 20 kids over the summer how to get into electronic security, hands-on, starting from the cabling all the way up.
Yep. Yep.
Tell me more about like the stuff you do with teaching kids Python and C, because I'm wondering if there's a way that I might be able to,
Yeah, so I actually teach adults primarily. It's adults. It's a small like private college, ECPI University, and we've got a few campuses, ECPI University, and I teach out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and but yeah, they've got a few campuses, and so they've got several different programs, but they're heavy on like the nursing side. And then they have an IT component where they, they get the training and the skills as well as an associate's and or bachelor's, and they can take it as far as to a master's. They do not offer the PhD, and it's in like cybersecurity. They changed the names. The other one I still just call it networking. And there's a bunch of them. Like they've got like cybersecurity. They've got a gaming degree. And I know there's cloud in there now as far as phrasing.
Okay.
But yeah. So I teach mostly I guess I teach pretty much them all, like 100 level courses, 200, and then I do like one or two classes, actually 2 classes on the like bachelor side.
So how much of this AI are you incorporating into your classes?
I've just started, right? Like, and I've been
like,
kind
do
of
the kids know what this is? Like, do your students, do they know walking in what this is?
No idea.
They've never heard of ChatGPT, or maybe they heard about it, but OpenAI they've never heard of.
Many of them know, right? You know,
I got blank stares, and I'm like, yo, you're supposed to be Gen Z, dog. What's going on here? I'm like 40 years old.
Right.
Yo, if I was 14 years old, I would be a fucking monster.
All right, bro, like if I did not have family responsibilities, like if I didn't have to, like, a couple times just now, right? I went today, like I went, I took my son to the, it's called Discovery Place Science, right? So we go to, a little museum, and there's a lot of things they can physically do and touch and all this, whatever. So we do that, great time. I bought him this little squishy brain and a glow in the dark squishy ball, right? So like he was trying to get some binoculars, some other stuff, whatever, and they were like way too high for the quality of material. But so we got these 2 little, squishy balls, right? And man, wow, we were home 3-4 hours, whatever it was, a moment ago, and like he's exploded the one with the glowing, with the glow inside, right? He comes to the door with like this white. I'm like, yo, is that paint or toothpaste? Like, what is that on your face and all over your body right now, like your shirt or whatever? He's like, it's the glow ball. I'm like, bro, what the heck, man? Like, how did that happen? And so apparently he just squeezes it until it bursts open, as a kid would do. So like, if I didn't have responsibilities, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like, I mean, I would be just like doing that all the time. So that's my young son, right? And I took my oldest son as well. He has special needs, so he's technically 22, but he's probably like, I don't know, 12 or 14 as far as like through like development kind of deal. So and he loves anything anime, and he loves to draw, but he's not a great drawer technically, but he is he is prolific, right? Like meaning that he's got stacks and stacks and stacks of books, right? And like a couple things I've done with him, you know, we put on like a showcase for the family and all, like put together a little video of like a lot of his artwork, right? And what I did was I'm like, yeah, give me, you know, one or two of your sketchbooks and you know, I'll go over like I'll ink them, right? Like he'll just do like line drawings and like they have no like no full or no like big life to them or whatever. So like I'll, you know, go and just hit them with the ink or whatever, and then like I took a bunch of pictures of it and all, and you know, I had him trying to, you know, figure out how to use a couple of these different like video programs to try to edit this stuff. Cause like he's totally like he'll tell you anything about like the history of Marvel. You know, like the history of Sony. You know, like Sony and PS3, 4, 5. Like he'll tell you, like, oh yeah, they did this and they bought these guys and they did. Like, he'll know all these kinds of like crazy facts. But you're like, uh, did you brush your teeth this morning? He's like, I don't know if I did or not. I'm like, go brush your teeth. Like, I don't know if you did or not either. So
Well,
go brush you know, like,
those,
you know, but he knows, like, the stuff he knows about, he knows it like a
uh-huh.
founder or an expert. Like, he'll tell you, like, me and my wife, we joke a lot and we'll say, like, we're watching some movie, right? You know, some popular big, you know, big movie or whatever. And maybe we don't know, you know, about the movie or, you know, whatever. It's like, oh yeah. We'll be like, yeah, you know, ask Sam. Call him out. Hey, Sam, what is this? Have you heard of XYZ movie? And he's like, oh yeah, that was by such and such, and it's backed by these people, and this, that, and like he'll tell you like all these crazy facts, but like certain things he just has no interest in knowing about or caring about or like whatever. And I'm like, bro, you are the perfect person to execute these kind of tasks for me. You know, of
Mhm.
like, you know, I'll feed you prompts and I'll feed you things, and you feed that to the GPT, and we're gonna build your whole imagination and your whole knowledge base in this thing, and you know, we're gonna make you the most professional. You know, like I think about. You know how you see, like, let's say if a person has like a voice, you know, they need you know, a voice box or something, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and you know, like so, like certain words and certain things that you know, it's like really laborious for them to say or try to do or whatever. And this, you know, obviously the voice box helps, right? So, like he'll be like super nervous about certain things, right? Like he gets like anxiety, um, you know, for almost
Mhm.
anything, right? And so I'm like, you know, we can do like we can take your short answers and your short, you know, kind of phrasing because, you know, I work with them. I've worked with young people, and I've done some, you know, psychology, you know, psychology type training and all. And so, like, I work with him in a certain way, and I like usually kind of know exactly where he's going and what he's trying to do, whatever he's talking about. And so, like, it's not too much interpretation that's needed from me, but I recognize that, like, just because I know what you're talking about, when you go and talk to, you know, the general public, they won't know much of anything you're talking about.
Mhm.
And so, like this kind of thing, like, 'cause I'll ask him, like, oh, you know, give me some ideas. Give me an idea about a story or something. And, you know, he'll come up with, you know, parts and pieces and, you know, so incorporating other stories or whatever. And so what I've done is it's like kind of take part of his stories, feed them into like GPT, and, you know,
Mhm.
it'll spit out like a whole, you know, a whole scenario. And then what I've had them do is like we've taken like a paragraph, you know, a couple different paragraphs, and like stripped out what sounds like a description of a thing, you know, whether it's an environment, you know, background, a character, um, you know, that kind of thing, and we'll throw it into the like mid journey, and it creates like a crazy, you know, you know, a crazy image that's like, you know, like you may not have been thinking of this exactly, but this can work for what you're talking about. You know, this works as a baseline. Like you can build storyboards and all that, yeah, everything. So like I've been having him trying to really dive into it, and you know, he's been making some vast improvements. So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try to use all of this stuff as best I can. I'm like, yeah, we turn you into a you know, a published illustrator and author, you know, with the assistance of AI.
Well, I think that if you can find out what they already love and you start there, you can introduce just about anything.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, that's one of the things I try to emphasize with, with my adult learners, right? Like, I'm like, school was good, school was great, school was awesome, right? But like, it's only going to give you a basic framework. It's not going to do the extra studying, and same thing with this now Chat GPT or whatever. Like, it's not going to do the work for you. It's not going to develop the passion for you. Like, school is going to give you the stuff, tell you where to go and find more stuff, and we give you access to these servers and VMs and physical environments and such. But like, if you've got another job or day thing or whatever, but and you don't spend your spare time trying to figure out this stuff, trying to replay it, trying to rebuild it, like, it's not going to be that beneficial to you. So, and some folks, we get a lot of military folks, right? Because they do really good with the, with like the military and the funding and all. And, some folks, they kind of really have a true, real goal plan idea. And then others are like, hey, look, they're going to pay me to go to school, so I'm going, and they're just there to, kind of collect the check and do whatever else they're already doing. And like, so sometimes that can be an area where it's like, yeah, I'm only going to give you so much. Like, I will tell you everything that's there and where to find it and how to use these different things and, how to recreate it and rebuild it. But like, I'm not going to be there, every evening, when the baby's crying and saying, hey, you need to probably jump on this computer and try this stuff again. Like, that's not going to be me, but that will exist. So like that tends to work. So I've been introducing Chat GPT through that kind of angle and like how it could, actually help them. But trying to emphasize that like, hey, you can install the software and get it to, get Active Directory up and running or whatever, right? But like, if you don't do the extra dive of like, what is it doing? Why did it choose this? Or why are you, why should I choose this or that or whatever? Like, what was the testing like? What were your troubles like? Like, it won't do any of that, So I really try to help them figure that out, right? Because like some of the lessons are, like you'll have, like I say, Windows, right? So you have to install or add a user by way of the GUI, right? And then you'll have to add a user, let's say, by way of the command prompt and like a PowerShell. And like, the steps are pretty straightforward, but the way maybe it's worded or written in the documentation may not be the greatest, right? So, like,
Yeah. At the end of the day, this is going to be an experience that will not be free of pain.
Yep.
Right? When you start with the army and you couldn't, if you didn't know how to run, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing here. If you know what I mean? And there's a lot of things that are going to, it's mostly battling with yourself is going to be a bigger battle than battling with the code.
Yep. True. Yep.
Because self-doubt is always going to be there at every turn.
Yeah. It exists.
So welcome to life. You know what I mean?
That's for sure. Hey, Mike, I'm probably going to have to go.
No, it's all good. I'm going to cut this episode. This is great. And plus, you may have noticed, like, I haven't been able to add anyone as speaker. There's something wrong with the Twitter space. I'm going to see if I can update the app.
For me, like, I dropped out and came back in a couple times, and I thought it was just one of me. So, yeah, it's still a little funky. A couple years in,
I'm going to update the app and try it again. But I appreciate it. Imagine we have this conversation every 18 months.
Yeah, I think I'm back in the game to some degree, man. I'm definitely going to stay in contact with you, bro. You've been great to me, man. And your ideas spark more ideas in me, and I really appreciate and enjoy that, man.
Well, you see the group, right? Like, when Queen left, I started jumping into other groups, but you know how it is jumping into other spaces. Fucking, they're all devoted to a single coin. You know, how long are you
yeah.
going to listen to that? And then you
Right,
have people
right.
looking at like two axes and pretending they can understand reality and the economic charts. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, you know, past that. So we have this
You
group
got to
called the
build your own
Syndicate.
little group. Yep, and you've
Yeah,
done that.
so that's what the Syndicate is. We have a bunch of people that jump in, like Rocky's a senior front end engineer in
Mhm.
California, all that kind of good stuff. We just help each other out.
Yeah, that's the way to work it.
Yeah, man.
There you
All love,
go.
eh? It's great connecting with you.
Yep,
You're the man.
indeed. All right, have a good one.
Stay close.
Yeah, indeed. Bye.